Hey everybody, so today we are actually going to be starting 3D shapes, and before we get into that, it's really important to know the different features of them, because then when we're talking about them, everybody knows what we're talking about. So if we start with the definitions at the top, please copy down these definitions for yourself. You can pause the video as you need time to catch up. So if you start by looking in the top half of the page, you can see right here there's an arrow pointing to this purple section, and that's called a face. So the definition of a face of a 3D figure is a flat surface. So that purple section's one example, and then there's lots of other faces going around each side of the shape. So each entire side is called a face. An edge is kind of highlighted in red. The edge is a line where faces meet. A line where faces meet. So for example, this is one example of an edge. There's lots of other edges on the figure. That purple face, and if I highlight this one in green, this green face, they meet at that red line. So that's why that red line is called an edge. There would be another edge if I highlighted this face instead. And then I drew this orange line. Now the purple and green meet at that orange edge. So the edge is kind of like the outline of the shape. So it's the line where the faces meet. A vertex, there's a little white dot. That's the corner. So each time we see a corner, we call that the vertex of the shape. So faces, edges, and vertex, but the plural is actually vertices. Faces, edges, and vertices are like the three main vocab words for 3D figures. So let's look at this example below. If we take a cube, for example, the first box in the table shows us all of the different faces a cube has. So there's a left face, a right face, a front face, a back face, a bottom face, and a top face. The second picture shows us all the edges a cube has. So it's like the outline, remember? A line where two faces meet. So they show some of the edges in green, they show some of them in red, and they show some of them in blue, but they're all the same. They're all edges. And then vertices would be the corners of the cube. Take a moment, pause the video for the amount of time you need, and count everything up. And below, write down how many faces a cube has, how many edges a cube has, and how many vertices a cube has. Okay, hopefully you've paused the video and completed that. Looking at the first chart with the faces, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different faces. For how many edges? Well, I see 4 blue. I'm just writing this down to help me count. You would not have had to have written this down. I see 4 blue, I see 4 red, and I see 4 green. So adding those all up, there's 12 total edges. You could have counted your own way, but I thought that'd be the easiest way for me to show it. And then how many vertices? 1, 2, 3, 4 on the top. 1, 2, 3, 4 on the bottom, for a total of 8. So that's what a face, an edge, and a vertice is. So that's some of the vocab we're going to go over today. That'll help us fill out the next couple sections. So the next big word that we're going to be talking about is one type of 3D figure that we're going to be studying, and that's called a prism. It's basically like the most common type of 3D shape, one that you would recognize the most, and we're going to do some activities that go along with it. So in this example, they kind of help us see what a prism is by giving us a definition. So the clue they give us is the base of a pentagonal prism is a pentagon. So let's look at this figure. I'm going to color in those bases, those pentagons, green. So there's one at the top and there's one on the bottom, but it could be rotated. It doesn't have to be the top and the bottom. It might be the left and the right. They could have turned this figure on its side, but in this particular picture, it's the top and the bottom. So the base of the pentagonal prism is a pentagon. The other faces are rectangles. So what I want to do is, actually I'm going to delete these because I want to copy this picture and, sorry. I want to show you two different things on the picture. Okay, so the first thing I want to show you would be the bases. So that's the screen. The bases for a prism can be any shape. So this would be the bases. Bases are example of faces, and they rhyme, so that's convenient. So bases are two of the faces on the prism. And then the other faces, maybe I'll write other faces. The other faces are all rectangles. So if I use pink to highlight them, going all the way around, I won't be able to highlight all of them. But there's a pink one, there's a purple one, that's another rectangle, here's a blue one, and there's some that are behind the ones I'm highlighting, so I can't really show it without it getting confusing. But a prism has two bases that are exactly the same, and then the other faces are rectangles. So what I'd like to do is for us to write down this definition. We're going to write down what a prism is. So a prism has two bases, and then other faces are rectangles. The two bases can be any shape. So in this case, they were a pentagon, but they could be a triangle, they could be a square, doesn't matter. Two bases that could be any shape, and then the other faces are all rectangles. That's what makes a prism a prism. So what they want us to do now in problem number 2 is to circle any shapes that you see in the figure. So look at that, that picture that you see. And here's a shape, for example. So whatever shape you think that is, circle the name of that. Here's another shape. Whatever you think that is, circle the name of that. Circle any shapes. Pause for as long as you need. Okay, so hopefully you're done with that. On the bottom, the first thing that I showed you, I found a green square or rectangle. I'm not sure what it is. If you circle either one, that's fine. So that's actually considered the base. And then the other shape I saw were pink, well, I made them pink. I see triangles going all the way around. So either a square or a rectangle and then triangles. This one's not a prism because it doesn't have two bases and it doesn't have other faces along the sides that are rectangles. It has 4 triangles instead of rectangles on the sides. So this one's not a prism. It's just a different 3D shape. So now, number 3, they want us to shade each shape if it's a prism. So let's get this definition down here. So for it to be a prism, it has to have 2 bases that are any shape across from each other, and then all the other faces have to be rectangles. Give this your best shot. If you think that it's a prism, color it in. If you don't think it's a prism, don't color it in. Pause the video, come back when you're ready. Okay, so we're going to go through these, and if you get them wrong, it's no big deal. We're learning it for the first time. So the first thing I want to check is if it has 2 bases that are exactly the same. So I see in number 3, this shape and this shape are across from each other and exactly the same. So it does have the bases. And then I want to check that the other sides are all rectangles. So my picture is going to overlap, but there's one rectangle that's pink. Maybe it would be a better idea for me to outline it. So here's one rectangle that's pink. Let's try blue. Here's another rectangle. And here's a third rectangle. So yep, this meets the rules for a prism because its base is 2 bases that are across from each other, and then it has rectangles. So yes, Number 3, it is a prism. You'll pretend I'm shading it in. I know that was what the instructions were. Okay, the next one, let's see, does it have 2 bases and the rest of the sides are rectangles? I actually don't see any rectangles in this picture, so right away, I know it can't be a prism. And in fact, this side is what we're going to be considering a base, and the rest of the sides are triangles. So we have 1 base and triangle sides. We're going to learn later that this is called a pyramid, and you can see why it's called a pyramid. But it doesn't have 2 bases, and the rest of the sides are not rectangles. So this is not a prism. Let's look at the last one. So this time, its bases are not on the top and the bottom. The 2 bases, the 2 sides that are exactly the same and across from each other, would be those 2 sides. They're on the front and the back instead of the top and the bottom. But yes, it does have 2 bases that are the same. Does it have rectangle sides? Let's see. Looks to me like it does. Like there's an example of one, and it looks like I could color in all the other sides the same. So each of these sides is like a rectangle going around it. And there's more in the back of it that I can't color in. So it has the bases and it has the rectangles. So yes, this is a prism. Awesome, that works. Now for problem 4, they're asking you the same thing. Go through and check the box if you think it's a prism. If you don't think it's a prism, don't check the box. Go ahead, pause the video. Okay, so we're using the same definition. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look for all of the figures that meet the requirement of having 2 bases. Let's see, it looks like this first one, can't really see the second one, but it probably does have 2 bases. So I'm not going to eliminate it yet. The second one, it looks like it only has 1 base. So I'm going to eliminate that. I don't see 2 sides that are across from each other that are the same shape. The next one, yes, this one also has 2 bases that are the same, so I'm going to keep it in the running. For number 4, I guess it's number 4. That one doesn't have anything across from it that's the same. If I try to make this one a base, I mean, it doesn't have another triangle that's exactly on the other side of it. So no, I would say this one does not have 2 bases. This one, here's the base here. It definitely doesn't have another side across from it that's a base. There's a tip on the other side of it. It's a pyramid, so no. Next one doesn't have any bases. And then the last one, I see 2 bases that are across from each other. So yeah, it does have 2 bases. So the ones I have left are the ones that have 2 bases. Now I'm going to check which ones have the other remaining faces being rectangles. So I think I'm going to get rid of my bases highlighting so that way I could show you more clearly. On the first one, I actually don't see any rectangles on the side. It looks like it's like a curved surface, so I'm going to eliminate that. On the second one, the third one in the list, second one that was remaining, it does look like the sides of it are all rectangles, and I already checked the bases, so I'm going to say that yes, this one works. And on the last one, the sides of it are also rectangles. I could look at all of the sides and they're each made of a rectangle, so that one also works as well. If I go back to some of the ones that maybe I was doubting myself on, like I think these 2 could be kind of hard. You have to be able to find rectangles on this. On those 2 shapes, there's nothing I could highlight that's a rectangle. So that's another reason why these 2 would be eliminated. So this guy and this guy would be the 2 answers. So that's what a prism is. Now we're going to go into the different types of prisms. It says match the names to the solid figure. So if you look at how we name a prism, the first word in the name is always the shape of it, and then the second word in the name is prism. So what this means is that the bases on this picture are going to be rectangles. The bases on this picture are going to be pentagons. The bases on this picture are going to be triangles, and so on. And then prism means that it's a prism. Take a second to see if you can match this. So draw a line and start in any order. Maybe some of them will be easier to figure out. If you don't know how many sides these all have, rectangles have 4 sides, pentagons have 5 sides, triangles have 3, octagons have 8, and hexagons have 6. All right, pause the video, come back when you're ready. Okay, hopefully you're ready. I'm not going to start with the rectangle because I think that one is a little bit harder to find. I'm going to start with the pentagon, the pentagonal prism. So I'm looking for a figure that has 5 sides for its bases. And the one that I find is this one. This one has 2 shapes that are across from each other that are pentagons with 5 sides. Then the rest of the sides are rectangles. So that's that answer. Now triangle. First one has the 2 bases that are triangles, and the rest of the sides are rectangles. So that's the triangular prism. Octagonal. So looks to me like this guy is the one that has 8 sides. You can't really see the other base, but you can assume it's there. Then the rest of the sides are rectangles. And then the hexagonal prism. Here are the hexagons, and then the rest of the sides are rectangles. And then that leaves me with the rectangular prism. What's special about a rectangular prism is since all of the sides are rectangles, it doesn't matter what you call the bases. So maybe I think these 2 are the bases. That works. They're across from each other. Everything else is a rectangle. Maybe I think the front and the back are the bases. I can't really highlight the second one, but that's the one I'm looking at. That works. The rest of the sides are rectangles, and the front and the back could be the bases. Or maybe I think the left side and the right side are the bases. That also works. They're across from each other and they're the same. The rest of the sides are rectangles. So for a rectangular prism, you actually get a choice of which side to consider the bases because every side is a rectangle. So that would be the answer to that section. The last thing that we're asked to do is to complete this table, and you can use the pictures from up above. So what they want to know is for a rectangular prism, how many faces, edges, and vertices it has. Remember that faces would be the flat part, the flat surface. Edges would be where 2 faces meet. It's kind of like the outline. And vertices are the corners. Okay, so let's go through this. I'm going to go through a couple of examples and I'm going to leave some for you to do. I'm going to start with the rectangular prism. I'm going to erase my highlightings up here because the pictures are drawn for us. The rectangular prism, I said, was this guy. And I need to find the faces, the edges, and the vertices. Here's how I would approach something like this. I might say, okay, here are 2 of my faces. So I have 2 greens. Here are 2 of my faces. I have 2 pinks. So that's like the top, the bottom, and the left and the right. So far I have 4. You could even make a tally if you want. And then this is going to get kind of messy, but I also have a front and the back. You really can't see the back. I have nothing left to highlight, but I know that that's 2 more. So the faces are going to be 6. There are 6 faces. The edges are basically all the black outlines. So going around the top, there's 4. There's 4 sides to that figure. Going around the bottom, 1, 2, 3, 4. So far I have 8. I could kind of make myself a note that it's 8. This could be my column for my final answers. And then I have the edges that connect the top and the bottom. 9, 10, 11, 12. So there's 12 total. I guess I didn't really need to write 8, but there was 4 more later on that I got. Then the vertices would be all the corners. So let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I don't really need any scratch work for that. There are 8 vertices. So now I need to copy that into my chart. So a rectangular prism has 6 faces, 12 edges, 8 vertices. Can you guys try the pentagonal prism? Pause the video and come back when you're ready to go over it. Okay, hopefully you're ready to go over it. This was our pentagon. So I need to find answers for faces, edges, and vertices. I want to show you a trick for counting the faces now. If I find my pentagons, so here are my pentagons, I know that there's going to be 2 of those because those are my 2 bases, the 2 pentagons. So far I have 2. Then for each side of the pentagon, so if for each edge, for example, the top and the bottom will have a face where those 2 meet. So here's 1. This would be 1 face. And then here's another side to the pentagon, and there's going to be 1 face that connects those. Here's another side to the pentagon. There's going to be another face that connects those 2 sides. And then what about the sides of the pentagon that we can't see? Here's another one. There's going to be a side back there that connects those guys. And then, let's see what other color will show up. Maybe yellow. Then there's this one as well. So there's this last side too. So the trick for that is that there's the 2 bases, the pentagons. And then since a pentagon has 5 sides, there's going to be 5 sides that connect them for a total of 7. So the 2 bases plus the faces on the sides for how many sides a pentagon has. All right, let's move on to edges. All right. Edges kind of have that same trick. So we know that the top pentagon has 5 edges. We know that the bottom pentagon also has 5 edges. And then for each corner of the pentagon, there's a line that connects them. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So there's another 5 that connect the top pentagon to the bottom pentagon for a total of 15. Next, let's look at the vertices. So the trick for that is the top pentagon has 5 vertices, and the bottom pentagon has 5 vertices. So that's 10. There's no other corners. So 7, 15, and 10. All right, see if you can use that trick to find the answers for the triangular prism. Pause the video, come back when you're done. All right, let's go over the triangular prism. And this is the last one I'm going to show all together. So for the triangular prism, we need to find the faces, the edges, and the vertices. So for the faces, I'm going to start with my 2 bases. There's the 2 triangles. And then for each side of the triangle, there's going to be a face that connects the top to the bottom. So there are 3 sides to the triangle. One side, that's 1 face. Here's my second side, that's 2. And here's my last side, that's 3. So each of those connect the top to the bottom. So 2 bases plus 3 faces on the side equals 5. And the reason I knew it was 3 was because there are 3 sides on a triangle. All right, edges. I know there's 3 on the top. I know there's 3 on the bottom. And then I know there's 3 that connect the top to the bottom. That's 9. Vertices. I know there's 3 on the top, and I know there's 3 on the bottom, and that's it. So that's 6. 5, 9, and 6. I'm going to leave you guys there with the last 2 to try on your own. When you do this octagonal prism, keep in mind that there's this guy on the back 2. It doesn't show it to